It's hard to know what the middle is anymore. I think we need to say that out loud. I think it's therapy for everyone. It's hard to know what the middle is anymore. How can we know? I mean, we would all agree that in the United States, things are so polarized. The key word is tribalism. And what is tribalism? It's sports, for example. Sports is a great example. We're the champions, they're the losers. Politics is the same way. We are looking down on the other side because they're immoral, they're ignorant, they're wrong. We're not, they are. That's tribalism. You arbitrarily choose a side. That's your team, makes you feel good about yourself. And that's what people do. Sports and politics, I really don't see a difference. In fact, I've watched a video on YouTube that explained that. They did a breakdown. They showed the news channels, CNN, Fox, etc., with all the talking heads shouting at each other. And then they showed how sports networks do the same thing. ESPN does the same exact thing. People are shouting and arguing about what they disagree about. And ultimately, largely, it's just gossip anyway. People are just trying to attack each other's character. That's all it really comes down to. I'm right and they're wrong. So you can imagine it's hard to know what the middle is when things are so polarized and so divided. What is the middle? It's hard for us to know because news networks sell ads. They're either selling you fear or they're selling you gossip. So you've got that to go on. If you go on what you see online, good luck with that. Because as we know, have you watched is it called The Social Dilemma on Netflix? That talks about how for your social media feed, it automatically uses an algorithm that feeds you what you need to hear. So if you believe X about this person or this concept, you're going to continue to get fed that, which is ultimately the concept of identity protective cognition. And that is when you strongly believe something, if someone tries to argue against it, you get defensive and believe the thing even more. Well, that's exactly the algorithm that social media uses. They purposely feed you what you already believe so that you believe it more. And that the other side, you don't even really hear much from them anymore. You just get to hear the sound of your own thoughts. That's what happened. So how can we even know what the middle is? And I'll leave this video on this note. I think, even though I haven't really made any videos about it, I want to insert this in the middle of this video. The vaccines for COVID. I think that's a prime example. So polarized in our nation about that. If you authentically wanted to think from a politically neutral perspective, what would a person do? And I've recently had the epiphany that I am politically neutral. I have zero interest in identifying as Republican or Democrat or conservative, liberal, or even libertarian. I just want to be removed from the political concept as far as having any faith in that. I don't. I'd rather work on myself. I'd rather work on people in my actual life and helping them through their issues. That's what I care most about. Not looking for different ways to be more divided. I don't want to be part of that human experience. But let's just say that you're politically neutral, that you're truly in the middle. How would you know whether to get a vaccine for COVID or not? How could you know? You've got one side from the very beginning who is saying, fear, end of the world, it's awful when COVID started. And now you've got now that the vaccine's out, the other side is saying, don't get the vaccine, it's going to make you blind, it's going to kill you, it's going to make you paralyzed, Bell's palsy, all these bad things. What does the middle look like there? And ultimately, you have to make a decision. What's going to make you feel at peace? Which version of hell do you basically have to choose? Because apparently they're both bad. Which one do you choose? Which one's going to give you peace? Which one makes you feel that you've got the least risk involved? How do you make a decision like that without siding with one or the other? Because they obviously don't agree with each other. They obviously don't think much of each other. But when it's all said and done, COVID's still happening. People are still dying of it. So how do you find the middle of that? Personally speaking, like I said, You just have to make a decision based on what you feel is going to give you the most peace. And that's all you can do. Because in theory, if half of people say it's the wrong decision and this half says it's the right decision, they both can't be right. But still, there are certain decisions that you have to make either way. You're gonna be wrong either way is the thing. It's just like voting for president, right? Oh, the one I voted for, neither of these are good, but I guess I'll vote. You can't win either way when it comes down to this. Ultimately, you have to think what's going to make me feel right inside, that 5 years from now, I made the best decision for me. That's all you can do. So to answer the question, what is the middle? It's hard to know what the middle is. I'd say, personally speaking, the middle is tuning out both sides and figuring out what you personally believe, and from there, making a decision. That's where we're at. It's hard for me to imagine my lifetime it ever not being this way anymore because of things being so polarized. It's hard to know what the middle is. And I actually had a conversation with a neighbor recently that perhaps the conversation is not even what's the middle. Maybe the real conversation is what's way over there. Because if this is what's going on, this side versus this side, and we're thinking, I want this thing in the middle instead, I don't want to take a side. Well, maybe the true middle is just way out there. We need to look in a completely different perspective, a different realm altogether to find that truth. Maybe that's what we need to do. For me, I've always been drawn to what was not necessarily the popular decision. So for example, me growing up, I never once struggled with peer pressure. I never did a thing so that I would fit in with other people. If anything, I did something different so that I wouldn't conform with everybody else. That was more where I was at. What's perhaps the irony of this is we're in a situation now where there's not just one thing that everyone's doing. In fact, everyone seems to be doing this thing or this thing. So it's not really peer pressure, but the idea of conforming, well, you choose this side or this side. Well, for someone who's never wanted to conform, how do I deal with that? You can imagine. That's why I'm drawn towards the middle. Whatever the middle is I'm sorting that out in my life. As someone who realizes I am truly politically neutral. Your comments belong right here.